Hey, folks. Welcome to Kaiser's Castle. Take a seat on my big orange couch, pop yourself a coffee, a tea, a soda, grab yourself an adult libation if you wish. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some stuff from our last program. A little bit of we're going to lightly touch on the Iranian situation, which I think, well, you'll hear what me and Baz's thoughts are on that. And to start it off, Baz, how have you been doing today, brother?
Yeah, busy away, mate. Busy away, just with work. I'm just in a transition now. Going to be moving to another job, and it's just that sort of that rigmarole of finding a new place to live and all that shit, you know. But we've been through it many times before, so hopefully this is the last one, if you know what I mean.
Oh, that's the best thing in the planet is when you're finally done and you no longer have to move from place to place. I was fortunate that when I got out of the services, I had a stable home, at my home, and did everything I did to keep it that way. And so I always had home base to return to.
Yeah,
But yeah, I know the situation. It is rough as the life. So that's all. We just lightly touched on it, and probably a little more than we should have on that
yeah.
one. But yeah, so it's awesome that you're doing great. So today, first I want to lead with two things. The one thing is the lead song that I just played on the intro was from Axion Ghost. Link will be in the description. Night of the Living Lead. He self publishes and he allows me to use his music. So he's a personal friend. He's somebody I've met in the meat space. So that's a real deal. The second thing, we had one comment. You saw the same thing. You tell everybody what you saw on the comment before Vinny from Brooklyn's comment. That there was a comment that popped up on our last show, and just tell everybody what you saw and what everybody else saw about one comment it shows, and yet nothing's there.
Yeah, it's so the comment popped up, and it's strange because usually if it's on the live show, or if it's even after that, the comment usually stays on the comments board. Um, it's showing that there's a comment there, but no comment showing. So what it tells, or what it suggests is someone's made a comment and then made that comment private for whatever means, I don't know. But if you're going to comment, you know what I mean. If you're agreeing, you're disagreeing, but it's all open for discussion because that's healthy. That's what we want to be doing. We want to be discussing different things, different sides, different views, different opinions, different options. You know, because that's why we're in this. That's why we're doing these shows, is to inform not just the people listening, but inform ourselves as well. Because we aren't, like I say, like you say many times, I'm the subject matter expert on my own opinion and my own opinion alone. You know,
Exactly, and
yeah.
we
So
welcome being corrected if somebody thinks there's something different. And me being the channel master on this, I guess, as Sword Point Nine, um, it was odd. I got the comment in my notifications bell, and I got it in real time. And I went to heart it, and to reply to it, and it was from a guy who calls himself Mr. Boston, whoever that is. Glad that you're listening. Uh, Upset that you didn't, or however it happened, it may have been YouTube. So let's not put the onus on him. It could
yeah,
have been some weird quirk because he put in quotes, um, nobody believes in false flags anymore. Okay, so that's either something we said, which I don't remember saying that, and I don't think you did either when we discussed it, or he was quoting somebody else or whatever. I have no idea. He could have been quoting me, and if he did, I stand corrected, Mr. Boston. But see, the problem was I couldn't even reply. I couldn't like it or heart it, saying, yeah, I'm going to make sure your comment stays right here because every time somebody comments, it's important. And I try to tell them, thank you, or, can you tell me a little more where that quote came from, something like that. And I'm not going to waste. Look, I don't listen to these shows once I do it. I have to sit through the comment section, and as people comment when it goes live, I will answer them, but I'm not listening to the show because I don't want to hear my own voice. I'm not that narcissistic. And one of the guys I have that popped on my show, and I want him on again, he's a good guy. Um, he was like, I don't like hearing my own voice. He goes, I sound this way or that. Well, I think the same thing. So I just don't listen to it. I just look at the comments and I flow with half the time on these shows, folks. The comment section's more interesting than the program. You can listen and you'll get more engrossed in the chat that's live. So, whatever. It's 10 one half dozen the other. Mr. Boston, if you want to comment again and see, it may be that he said false flag, and I did have one of my videos pulled with no strikes, nothing like that. No notification from YouTube why, but it got pulled because some idiot made a comment, and I had a guest on that was talking about false flags, and it pulled the video. So it could be just that he put that in his wording that YouTube could have pulled it. So who knows? I honestly am clueless as to that. And I think we've whipped that dead horse a little too much. So let's move on with it, shall we?
Let's do that.
So getting back to the meat and potatoes of it, we were talking before the show. Of course, we're right. The limpet mines were placed by somebody. It wasn't something because it was all above the water line. And, if you're going to try to sink something, you use a mine that's under it. And so they were just limpet mines. So they could have been placed on the ship before it left. Anything could have happened with them. And then all of a sudden the queer thing is we get video from whatever it was, whatever they used to video it, of a dinghy that could have been anybody's dinghy pulling a mine off, right? And they're saying they had fingerprints. They know it was Quds Force or Republican Guard, whatever. It's nonsensical. And then the shoot down, this is where we're coming up to date now, of the Global Star. Well, those things can go out 100 miles and still get pictures just like you're standing 5 or 8 feet away from it, with that kind of clarity, even at night. And for them to be flying in the strait is nonsensical because it could have been flying over a somewhat more secure area to fly over, if you know what I'm saying. And less chance of it getting shot down. And somebody in another page was saying, yeah, the Iranians were showing off their air defense artillery, their missiles, anti-aircraft missiles. And I was like, you mean the Russians' anti-aircraft, missiles, their ADA, air defense artillery. It's all nonsense. Everybody forgets that. I got into an argument on another guy's thing with him when we were talking. It wasn't really an argument. It was a good-natured disagreement where I'm like, Iran is a geopolitical power in that region. And we even knew that in the Second World War because when Lend-Lease was going on to you guys, we were also Lend-Leasing shit to Russia. And it went through Iran. There was you guys can look it up. It's the book, I have it. It's military railway system, the American military railway system in the Second World War. And it goes in depth on how much tanks. There's pictures you can find on video, black and white, of course, of Russian what were they called? I'm not a big plane guy, but the aircraft that we had that me and my wife took a flight on the damn thing. It was a bomber, the kind that they had in that movie. As a matter of fact, it was from that movie. It was the movie, why am I mind dumping it? Where the whole crew landed, they got their 25. It became a big, has a woman painted on the side of the damn Memphis Belle.
Memphis, yeah.
Yeah, there was one of those planes flying, and it had a big red Russian star. You know how they used to paint them on their fuselage and wings during that era. So, it's all nonsense that Iran has always been important since its days of Persia. Anyways, you go on with your side of the pond's take on it, and let's see if we have agreement or some disagreement.
Yeah, so obviously I've been away for a couple of days and I'm catching sort of like tail end of the news. You know what I mean? When I can grab a three G signal, 4G signal. So it's just sort of my take on it. And again, feel free to correct me, brother, or if there's people commenting. The Global Star, it's a huge surveillance platform. It's not a wind up fucking Meccano toy that's fired off some slingshot. It's jet engine um, with a good few thousand mile sort of capability. To be flying over the area and to be shot down by the Iranian, in brackets, Soviet air defense. To me, it doesn't make any sense, and I think um, going on to what the president had done, President Trump, there was sort of that I wouldn't say knee jerk reaction, but it's okay. One of our surveillance platforms has been shot down by hostile Iranian action. We're going to have to obviously escalate this further because this is, you know what I mean, an attack on a national asset and all that good stuff. And then obviously not renounced, but he took back the order for military action. And I think what had happened behind the scenes is he's been given more information, more intelligence, and things like that. From my point of view, and again, my opinion is my opinion. I'm only the expert in my own opinion. Um, I think the president was told that it was shot down over Iranian soil. I don't think it was. Why would you send? And rightly so. I'll play devil's advocate here, like I said to you before the show, brother. If the Iranian intelligence services started flying surveillance drones over the United States or any other nation, the UK, France, Germany, the chances are that would also be shot down. Um, so if there is a let's be a hostile aircraft in your airspace, you take it out. You know, there's a lot of lessons that have been learned since 9/11 and previous to that. That an airspace is to be protected. Don't matter what nation you are, you need the permission of that host nation to fly into their airspace. Up to a certain height, I know that much. Then it becomes sort of like in the realms of sort of like suborbital space and all that crap. Um, but going back to my point is, I think that the initial sort of report to the president was they've shot down our bird over Iran, sorry, in international waters. I think myself that the actual drone was in international in Iranian airspace for it to be shot down.
or at
If
least or at least at that 12-mile nautical mark
Yeah, yeah,
from it. And that's what I meant about they could have stayed away from the Strait of Hormuz and removed that as even an option.
yeah.
But in my opinion, look, I am the foremost expert on my opinion. In America, I don't know about in England, but in America, if a police service dog gets shot, they consider that as shooting a police officer. It's nonsensical. A dog can be replaced. The officer can't.
Yeah,
So that's, so what? You wasted, let's say, $1 million on a bomb dog or something, and it gets shot by some idiot, right? Or
yeah,
whatever happens to it, and it's the subject's, that's the only thing that died. Well, they will prosecute it like a homicide of a human being. And I feel the same way. Look, here's the facts. Nobody died in either of the freighters. Fact number one. Fact number two. The Global Hawk, Global Star, I blend, like I said, aircraft are not my thing. I just know the platforms, what they can do and what they can't because end product user, just like you. Uh, but the point is the damn thing can stay up for a long time. We're talking, you know, for a long time. That's all I'll say. I really don't want to broach into how many days or whatever it can stay up. But the point is, so what? Me and my wife were talking about it, and I'm like, look, the damn thing cost X amount of dollars. That's a fact. It is an asset, just like a satellite's an asset. To consider that as the same as shooting down a plane with people on it, even one pilot, it's not, to me, the aircraft with the person on it is irrelevant. If the person is safely whisked away, doesn't get captured and stuff, No harm, no foul. It's not anything worth going to war over. And I feel the same way with a drone. So what? It gets down. If they grab it technologically, I think we should do everything we can to get it back from them. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. But I also don't consider that an act of war either. You know, an
Yeah.
act of war is if loss of life, in my opinion, and I am the foremost expert on my opinion, and legally, I'm sure I'm going to be wrong. So all you legal beagles out there can, go against old Shuffy's word. But old Shuffy has something called common sense, and we all know the law right now doesn't have much common sense. And it's the same as considering a dog a human as considering a drone an actual aircraft with people on board and dying. You go and ran on it, brother.
Yeah, and again, I think it's all the context of it. Was it in international waters or was it in Iranian airspace? Let's be honest, and again, devil's advocate, if that surveillance platform was in Iranian airspace, under that elevation, so it's a legitimate Iranian airspace, then the US don't have a leg to stand on. It doesn't matter what you Iran are doing with their threats, with their nuclear program, this supposed strike on these freighters. The fact was that aircraft is there for a hostile reason. Okay, we aren't collecting pictures to put up on the Oval Office wall. We're collecting intelligence, surveillance intelligence, I-star intelligence to formulate strike packages. So we know where to send these Tomahawk missiles. We know where to put our special forces, and so on and so forth. So it's there even though it's not carrying out actual direct action, it's still intelligence gathering. It's a hostile act
Right.
in another nation's airspace, and it would be frowned upon if like I say, if that was the US or the UK or any other host nation around the world, would be taking action. You look at and we have it. I know you guys will probably have it off the coast of Alaska, but we're constantly sending up interceptor aircraft for the Russian bombers probing our northern airspace around Scotland and places like that. And it's become a point of it's a non-point because it happens so often. I mean, these pilots are flying up and swapping with pieces of A4 paper their WhatsApp and Facebook profiles because they're doing it so often. They know each other. All the pilots know each other. So it becomes a non-point. It's just sort of a routine thing, and it's nothing new. We were doing it in the 80s. We're doing it in the 70s, but now, yes, there's that sort of like, I won't say a hostile element to it, but it's just a routine act. It's
Well,
just it's not so much saber rattling, if you know what I mean. It's just, look, we're doing our job. You're doing your job. This is what we do because it's East versus West. That sort of like, it's not a cold war, it's not a hot war. It's that lukewarm sort of war, that in between, that limbo of, yes, we're shaking hands in front of cameras, but we're doing more intelligence and more information gathering than we ever did in the Cold War, and that
and
is just fact. That's fact.
and deals being done in the dark. I mean, in all honesty, even during the Cold War, the SR-71 would never have been built if we didn't get the titanium from the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
And it's brinksmanship, but brinksmanship has to be put to the ground level commander, and you have to have somebody that's got enough common sense not to let it get out of hand, because you can actually have a serious shooting war. And my point being on this, I remember being out in the middle of the ocean on a rim pack and a west pack, and I remember bombers flying over us, opening their bomb bay doors, and I'm looking around. I was on the USS Denver with other brothers of mine as a Marine, and we were up on deck when it was happening. And I looked around and I'm like, we're all shark food. We're fish food. If he were to actually drop something, we're fish food. And I remember few things like you'd have uh, at the time Soviets had fishing trawlers that would go out in the ocean. They're fishing boats, but they have antennas everywhere. They were intelligence assets, and they would put on the brakes as our entire grouping of ships would go around them, and they'd be like waving their Soviet flag and stupid shit like that.
Yeah.
And it's not that we knew them, we just knew that, at first it's sort of unsettling, but it's just the way the game is played. And brinksmanship on this level can get really retarded really fast, and it can be deadly. And Putin was not wrong when he said it would quickly devolve into an international war that nobody wants to see.
Yeah, it's and again, like we were saying there, what you mentioned about the bombers. There was a Royal Navy exercise a few years ago. I might be incorrect. It might have involved the Americans and the French and some other nations, but it was actually being shadowed by a Russian intelligence ship to the point where they actually wrote this ship into the exercise, and this ship became a part of the exercise. So they were running real counterintelligence and stuff like that. And when they did the sort of the aerial photograph, the aerial sort of photograph of the actual entire sort of carrier group, the naval exercise, like the end of the exercise, so they could give each captain of each ship this big photograph. They actually invited the Russian vessel to join the photograph, and it did, and you can actually see it on the internet. So it's gathering intelligence at a distance in international waters that's just a routine. But flying surveillance, ISTAR gathering assets over another nation's country is a hostile act in its sense, as is dropping an aircraft in international waters.
Yep.
It's still an act of piracy. Um, taking another nation's vessel in international waters, and then it becomes a criminal act. It's not an act of war,
Right.
unless you're at war with that nation. Like when we were at war with Argentina, we sunk the Belgrano in international water. Now a lot of people started fucking crying that the UK has just wiped out all these Argentinians. But what they need to look at is, where was the Belgrano going? What was it doing, the Belgrano? You know what I mean? It was a hostile vessel going to commit hostile action. We were at war, so that
Bring
element of piracy, yeah, that it no longer stands if you're at war with another nation,
right.
like we were in the early '80s, and therefore we sent the Belgrano to the bottom of the fucking ocean. But this surveillance aircraft, if it's been dropped in international waters, then it needs to be a criminal act. If it's dropped over Iranian airspace and it's now laid in the desert of Iran or wherever it's laying, then it needs to be obviously. We're going to talk about the consequences and the sort of like, we need to get this piece of equipment back. But at the end of the day, the Iranians were justified dropping that aircraft, whether you agree with that statement or not. But it's good to see that cool heads prevailed, because, like you said there, brother, it's an asset. It's just electronics. It's metal, plastic, bits of copper. Do we need to start sending our sons and daughters into another Middle Eastern country and getting them back in bags and boxes? We don't, over a single asset. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. And let us say, we just hope cool heads prevail. And we did mention before the show that I don't think it's the appetite now isn't there for a full scale war. Our nations have been at war for nearly 2 decades now. The the our societies, our general population as a whole don't have the appetite to seeing more coffins come back with flags on them. We're already occupying the countries to the east and to the west of Iran. Um, we don't need to be occupying Iran
Well,
unless Iran step outside their circle and start influencing and carrying out actions that will drive us to conflict. If you know what I mean?
right. Actions on. No.
Yeah,
Now you have a point, a few good points that I want to touch. I want to go back real quick. Just like the Argentinian ship that was sunk, that had a mission, and that mission was to bring more troops, reinforcements to the conflict. And so, yes, letters of marque go back years. That would not be piracy. You know how the game works in naval shit. But the point being, as we run up to what you were just talking about, um, you had just stated that we're sick and tired of war, this, that, and the other. I've been an advocate for years. There's a lot of late comers to the game, but I remember back in the 80s, I was like, the U.S., England, well, you guys kind of do with the Gurkhas, but and a couple other forces, I think the Omani Special Forces, you guys can tap into different things like that. But I'm an advocate of the U.S. Look, nobody wants to see their sons and daughters coming back in coffins, flag draped coffins, whatever, right? That's a fact. That's just true. It's a truism. Well, why don't we have in the U.S., and it's never made sense to me, a foreign legion? Or even an American legion where you have former soldiers who are Americans, but they're older. They've got their training under the belt. They really just have to go through, like, I don't know, whatever the new unit wants to make standardized, their kind of training. And then you can deploy them. And they're older people, probably have kids, whatever, but they're not servicemen. They're not, officially servicemen. They're a legion. And they can be shipped out. And, they'd have to be pulled from tier one type units, former Rangers, this kind of stuff. But they could be sent anywhere on tourist visas and just do things, we do it lightly in certain things, but you know what I'm saying. Just an actual force that can be moved into an area a little more clandestinely, and then supplied in other ways, and you have less of a footprint and a fingerprint on the mission. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, having worked with the Foreign Legion, the French Foreign Legion, they're very sort of mission specific, and it's a strange one to touch on, brother, because I think what we're doing there is it's sort of like go between the official sort of like active duty military and your private military company, and it's finding that where that fits in between, where the Foreign Legion have been sort of an established force, and part of the French Ministry of Defence, if
And
you
their
know what I
culture,
mean. Yeah,
and
yeah.
and their entire culture. I get that, but I'm saying there's no reason, just like Trump's invention of the Space Force.
Space
Okay,
Force.
whatever that's going to be, right? We're
Space Force.
yeah, Space Force. But there's no reason why, and I'm talking back in the if we would have established that in the mid '80s, think about this. It would already be around for fucking almost 50 years or 40 years. I'm sorry, I just lied to you. So it makes no sense we didn't do that then, and there's no sense that we can't do it now. All militaries have a start point. 1776, we started our little, as you guys like to call it, our little I can't remember the term everybody used to say to me as a septic, our little revolt. That's
Yeah.
but but it's still established the United States military and the United States as a nation. And to add another fifth or sixth, if you want to, Coast Guard is during time of war, and it is a time of war. And like you said, we're nearing 20 years. Uh, that's even a young force, actually. If you look at the meat and potatoes of when it actually stopped just being our coastal guard, you know what I mean? So it's just a unique thought that I think military planners, and there's got to be a specific mission, just like the Legion falls into that. PMCs, in my opinion, are good for one type of mission, and that mission is nouns, protection of nouns, person, places, things. The other military contractors, the guys who take the shit and suck the shit, they're usually TCNs out of Porta Johns, third country nationals for those just listening. The cooks, a lot of times at the DFACs, maybe the guy who's the head cook, the chef, or whatever you want to call him at the defense food area court, or whatever DFAC stands for. I can't even remember, but it's where you go to eat. And dining facility administration center or something like that. I can't. It stands for something. I can't remember what DFAC stands for, and I don't care. But it's where you went to eat. You might have the cook. Everybody else cooking's TCNs nowadays from Uganda or somewhere, or oh,
Bangladesh, places like
Bangladesh.
that.
Yeah. Uh, but but for security, for nouns, person, places, and things, yes, the PNCs fit perfectly there. Doing or T, daggone it, PMCs are great for that type of mission. Private military companies, if they want to run PSDs, static security, golden. That's what their mission is. If they have to get into combat, they have to. But that's not the point. The point is to get off the X. Now, if you start talking about hiring private militaries to do the private military work, going out there running and gunning with the boys, now that's where a level that you're still a PMC, but you're starting to borderline. And we've talked about this. If you're working for your own government, even doing that, you are a contractor for your government. That's the contractor. If you're working for that foreign nation, then you are a mercenary. A professional soldier is what I prefer the name to be. But they don't like to say mercenary anymore, so they came up with the term PMC as a general catch-all. And so you delineate that into another quote unquote American Legion, Foreign Legion, whatever, however they wanted to run it, and somewhere you'd find a sweet spot to put that to have the complete plausible deniability force.
Yeah, and it's where that fits in the spectrum of you know what I mean, the defense of your realm, of your nation. Is it used? Again, having something like that, it can be used not so much internally, because that's what your National Guard's for.
Right.
But it's a bigger brush that it can paint with, if you know what I mean. We're lucky. We're lucky in the United Kingdom that we can operate on our own streets. In a multitude in the entire spectrum of warfare, from counter-terrorism operations, which we do on a fucking regular basis.
Yep.
Without mentioning the unit's name, but there's a unit in the UK that's got no less than 5 operations running this minute in the mainland UK. And that's just one of these. That's without obviously the special branch of the police forces, the counter-terrorism branches, and all that good stuff. Where we can do that as a military, we can do public order, so we can be actually called against our own population. That's what I'm trying to say. Not in a hostile act, but if needed be, to quell rebellions, coups. But obviously, it's a very sort of big set of bollocks. It takes a big set of bollocks to turn around and unleash your nation's army onto its population.
Well, see,
There was sorry, bro. There was sort of a lot of public disorder a good few number of years ago down in London, and the police just couldn't handle it because it was such. And I'm talking like sort of like if you look at the LA riots, it was just absolute fucking carnage, and the police they couldn't handle it. And it was same in London where they were actually getting our sort of like what we call specials. It's just like your police, PCSOs or something. It's like part-time police. They were even getting those, giving them a helmet and a small round shield to try and go and quell this. And even the police were going, "Why don't you just call the army in? They're the experts at this." obviously because we've been doing it for years. The British Army's public order, been doing it since the Malayan campaign, all through Northern Ireland, and even the police were like, "Get the army in. They're the ones that can fucking quell this within 24 hours," but they wouldn't. So obviously that appetite's not there to unleash the army, or the navy, or the marines, or the air force onto its own population. So maybe that American Legion would fill that gap where it could be used on American soil to a certain extent. But again, your constitution is it posse comic? You know what I'm on about, brother. I can't remember the words themselves. Is it Latin or something like that? Where it says that your nation's forces can't be used against its own population, which is obviously a good thing and a bad thing. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Well,
we
now
we've got we go on go.
now we have the guard, the National Guard. It's similar to your territorials, and the point is the difference is that hold on.
Yeah, it's there to be used as um, a multitude, as like a task force.
Well, the National Guard is under the control of the governor, so it bypasses Posse Comitatus, which is the law
That's it. That's what I was on about. Yeah,
that denies us using active forces. The thing is, in a time of war during martial law, uh, the Guard can be activated, and so can U.S. forces. I mean, this is a fact.
yeah,
But and it happened during the L.A. riots. And it also happened. Here's one that people they always want to talk about Kent State. They forget that when they were trying to prevent black children from going into schools, that not only did they take the I think it was the 101st Airborne because the Guard and the state police and everybody were protecting this one school. I think it was Selma, Alabama, somewhere like that. Anyways, the president got on the line, called the AG, the adjutant general of that Guard unit, and said, "You have just been federalized." And even the Guard unit had to turn their guns on the state police. So it does happen. And also, Ruby Ridge, they used special forces. They've used them at several the Branch Davidian compound in Waco. They
yeah,
always call them advisors, but if you think that they're going to let police use some of the special stuff that they use and implement it with no experience, no training, they might give them a week's training so they're familiar with the item, so they know what not to be around when the SF guys actually toss it in, just like the flashbangs that were done in the Iranian embassy on your guys' side of the pond. Those were thrown in by the SAS. They didn't let nobody else do that. The Blades did that. And so it's just ridiculousness when people in America, it's actually kind of an infantile thought that Posse Comitatus really means anything because it doesn't. And just like you guys in England could do that, you probably could do that to stop some knife crimes now in London. Knowing
yeah.
Londonistan hasn't been taking their security seriously since they elected Khan, the Conqueror, whatever.
We should just build a wall around that fucking place and fill it with fucking water.
That's sort of how I feel about California, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it's pretty. I know it's not sort of well publicised over there, and it's only sort of coming into light in the UK. Obviously, we had the Iranian embassy back in the 80s, and that was sort of the world's introduction to the SAS. But the SAS, amongst other special forces, are always working in the UK. You look at the Manchester bombing, the sort of aftermath of that, of all the raids that we're doing, and it's like it's there on the 6 o'clock news. The raids are doing the house. You've got the CTSFOs, the counter-terrorism special firearms officers. It's like your version of counter-terrorism units over there and SWAT teams. Like a very specialised, special forces trained police unit that go in and do them. And they're there in their grey coveralls, the grey Nomex, and they're kicking in doors. And there's like three of these guys. And then there's a guy in jeans with a T-shirt with, a Gentech or an Ops Corps helmet on, and he's got cry body armor on, and it's obvious that he's not a policeman,
Right.
but he's carrying the 416 or the SFW Demarco C8, and he's kicking in doors with him, or he's walking to the front of the stack and kicking in the door and going in, you know. So we have our special forces operators
Tossing
working
in
on
the flashbang.
yeah, working on the streets of the UK. But we can do that. That's not a big secret because we don't have this posse comitas. Is it posse comitas? You obviously you know me. I don't
Posse
speak
com-
fucking Latin.
Posse
Don't speak
com-
fucking Latin.
Yeah, Posse Comitatus.
Yeah,
Basically, what that says is, it's because in our Bill of Rights, it's the quartering amendment where no soldier shall be quartered in a U.S. home. This, that, and the other. It's to delineate the military and plus Title 10 of DOD, where all the authority for DOD stands and lives. They wanted a complete separation of the military from civil law enforcement,
yeah,
and that then you bring in Title 6, and that's the Marshals Act and all that stuff federally, which gives them the power. I mean, even the FBI, all federal agencies that aren't DOD and that aren't customs type agencies, customs and immigration type agencies, get their authority through Title 6, and even the FBI. So, and in fact, DOJ and the FBI could be disbanded and just let the Marshal Service take it over. And that's what they should do until they clean up the FBI, in my opinion. But now we're getting into local bullshit politics, and who cares? But yeah, since everybody delineates their authority and power from the marshals, let the marshals fucking run it.
yeah. And like I say, it's there is times where that could probably hinder having that sort of law into effect, where you look at certain elements, and I'm thinking the Boston bomber situation. Let's say it went a bit bigger than that, and you had a cell working in. Well, you will have cells working in the US, but let's say they decide to start taking action. Um, get the guys from Bragg in there, get the guys from Virginia or San Diego in there, Coronado Beach, to do what they do best, is kicking in doors and shooting fucking fools in the face.
Yeah, well, the Boston bombing is unique in U.S. history also, because that's the first time in U.S. history. Now, it was done, there was some government stuff happening there. I mean, I don't want to get and downplay that, but the majority of that proved. And then later on, people had a cow about an operation that went on out west, mostly. I mean, there was stuff going on in the Midwest and other places. But, anyways, the whole point is they shut down a city. And that's through FEMA. FEMA actually has, continuity of operations, all these different plans that they do. And when people try to call bullshit on this, sounds like you're sick, brother. Uh, you must not be muting.
Sorry, brother.
No worries. But with FEMA, they've got all these plans and processes, and I tell them easily, every city that's in America has an outer belt. That means something goes all the way around the city. Some of them have inner belts, which are, they go and draw it even tighter in. And you think that's just for, traffic flow and stuff, which it is. But you have to remember, our national highway system was built and designed during the Cold War by DOD. And the reason is you could land a bomber, a fighter on that highway.
Yeah,
They have to have X amount of straight length of road for landing aircraft, and to control access and deny access. And that was the point of the entire system. Well, you saw Boston, the only time in U.S. history a complete city was on lockdown. I mean, that was a major case. And even that, there's people that will say that was a a double F. I'm not going to use the false and then have to bring in the flag a little later. I'm not
Yeah,
talking about that. I'm just going to call them FFs. Some people call them FFs, and it seems like everything is an FF. But who cares? I mean, in all honesty, it's something that happens. You have to use some discernment, and you have to think: is this logical or not? Does it make sense or does it not? And you have to look at everything and come to an opinion on it. And I guess the gist of this entire conversation, you and I can agree on, is probably fuck all is going to happen about this, the Iranian thing.
yeah,
Um, I gave my opinion on the quickest way that he could have done something. And you notice they put General Soleimani came out and he made a big speech yesterday. And he was like, we don't want war, this, that, and the other. He could have just played along with them and said, we're going to punish these guys, blah, blah, blah. And he could have, made a play on that, whatever. They're out of control. But who knows what they're doing in the background, man. And I really don't care about it, but I don't think everybody on one of the boards I was on last night, everybody kept talking about what's going to happen with it. And I'm like, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing's going to happen with it.
no.
Every once in a while, they fucking pull out their little bullshit, and we do our little bullshit, and it keeps things lively.
Yeah, it helps, and it's stocks and shares. Stocks and shares going up and down. Just one there. My apologies. My nose started pissing with blood. That's why I'm hawking up all this blood. So I'm not actually sick. I just had a massive
Nice.
a nosebleed for some strange reason. So
I
t-shirts, good job I'm wearing a black t-shirt anyway.
Yeah, I got those last trip in Afghanistan. I would get nosebleeds. Thank God, I had a blue pillow and blue sheets, but dark blue, real dark. And I'd wake up and clotted because it was from air conditioning too cold.
Yeah,
And the idiots, I can't say idiots. I like them both, but they loved that place freezing. They're not idiots, so I really do have to rephrase that. They were good dudes. They just were warm blooded and needed it to be ice cold, and I'm an old man that needs it a little warmer. So I was the idiot, not them. But yeah, I ended up with a lung infection from that op. So whatever, who cares? It's the same thing, man. I don't care about what's going on with them, and I didn't care about what's going on with my own personal health while I was still doing it. So, no pissing, no bitching, just laughing about it, thinking about it back then. But, my wife uses terminologies I don't use about those guys because of that. And so I was using her term. But no, they were good guys, and they're just a little more warm blooded.
yeah. And you had the dark sheets because you kept pissing the bed. Is that the reason?
Oh
Getting older.
yeah, oh yeah. Getting
Getting
older,
get, getting old now. Hide the piss.
they don't sell the pins at the fucking the military PX, bro. Sorry. No, no, but they just issued everybody these fucking dark blue sheets, man, and I was thankful, man, because I was like, God, who cares? But after I started getting nosebleeds, I was like, thank God, I threw my pillows out when I left because I was like, they were caked with blood, bro. It was every night.
No, it's I've had them. Yeah, I've had them for a while. No, but going back to the conversation that we've just had. Yeah, it's I don't think anything's going to happen. I'll be surprised if it escalates. I would dare say there's going to be an escalation, but this escalation will cap out at some point where cool heads will prevail because with Iran, let's say it's not Iraq, it's not Afghanistan. They are a geopolitical power, and I think what we need to do is, yeah, and I'm not going to sort of like sound racist here, but we need to put brown faces on this. It needs to be stabilise that region, and obviously the biggest part, well, the biggest other sort of element in that region is the Saudis. I think the Saudis need to get on top of this and just say, look, just stop being fucking idiots.
Well,
If you start sending these so-called nuclear weapons because you want to wipe Israel off the map, it's going to affect Saudi. Fallout will affect the entire region. And you really think the Israelis aren't going to start cracking open the cans on these these rumored 100 fucking nuclear weapons. And let's be honest, these nuclear weapons that the Israelis have got will be a lot more advanced than anything that fucking Tehran can come up with, because our Israel's our friends. Where do you think they're going to get these missiles from? You know,
That and the Saudis, I would not put money against the Saudis having a like, not maybe in numbers, but a like strike capability.
yeah,
And so, yeah, it would be. That's why I said Putin was exactly right that it would quickly devolve into a global incident. And it's something none of us want to see, except for maybe the elite thinning down our populations. But could you imagine the actual devastation of our ecology
yeah,
from it? I mean, Mother Nature would heal itself eventually, but eventually could be 10,000 years.
yeah,
And that's the issue. And we'd be back in the Stone Age again. Everybody and it's so funny who's pushing for these wars now. It's the people on the left. And and when I say that, don't think I'm thinking just Democrats. I'm also talking about the Republicans. And I'm talking on our side of the pond, brother. The
yeah,
Republican war hawks and the Democrat progressives, the progressive cons and the neocons is what I like to call them. They're both pushing for war every time the war bell dings. And it's like, I do not understand how they don't realize that when you throw the war dice, it can come up craps. And that's civilizational ending. Man, my words today are just slipping off my tongue like fucking acid off of it.
yeah. We need to be careful because we've brushed against this too many times. You know, you got the Cuban Missile Crisis and all stuff like that. We've got India and Pakistan constantly butting heads. And I said this a couple of years ago. I don't think what it'll be is one nation pressing that so-called red button. It'll be done under the guise of terrorism. You know what I mean? A proxy agent. You look at Sum of All Fears. You know, is it Ben Affleck? Is it Sum of All Fears? Where the
I don't know.
atomic, yeah, it's a Tom Clancy sort of movie where there's
I read the book. I've just never
yeah,
seen the movies.
an atomic weapon goes off in Baltimore. It's inside a drinks vending machine, and it's put into sort of an NFL stadium or a baseball stadium, and it goes off and fucking takes out um, Baltimore. I think we I
Yeah,
reckon we'll see an issue like that in the next 10 years, certainly.
that
Either a dirty bomb or something like that, where it's
that
going to actually cripple a city.
yeah, that's totally uh, different from what the book is. So I mean, I'd be talking out my ass to try to conversate about a fantasy movie like that. I Is there such a thing that could happen or might have almost happened? You know, who knows? I'm not gonna get into that kind of stuff because it is what it is. It's all fantasy. It's all role play. It's all what ifs. But the reality is, what I believe will happen is you're going to see a step up in proxy wars. They're going to start screwing around in Iran or Iraq and Afghanistan again, a lot harder than they have been. And so will we. Unfortunately, we need to get the fuck out of those places, honestly. I have the same thoughts on prisons, the prison systems in America. If they want to be violent in a prison, cool. You wall it off with armed guards so nobody can get out, and you just have aircraft drop knives in liberally. Let them kill each other. And I feel the same way about the Middle East, honestly. Isolate it. You guys, will deal with you. We'll trade with you, but that's it. And any monkey business, we're going to come down hard. But from now on, you guys kill each other at will. I have
Yeah,
no issue with that. Because if you're going to, look, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. The moron that went out in Dallas last weekend and tried to do, or a few days ago, I can't remember when it was, dude. There was a meme going around that my buddy Curtis, you might have met him now, put out on my page. And him and he superimposed him somehow in a Call of Duty uh, little screen, and it was hilarious. The guy was so jacked up, had like 2 years in the military, and it's like he looked classically funny, like almost like a comedy thing, but he was like trying to be an operator as fuck. I don't know what he was trying to do, but he failed miserably, and he was shot down like a dog. And he,
I saw that he got one centre of mass, just that single shot centre of mass.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's just an idiot, and people are like that. So who cares? I mean, but hopefully everybody who ever tries to do that is an idiot like that, and they get killed because that's just people, or they get caught before they do it. That's just people who are idiots, and it happens all over the planet. And I have as much compassion for him or anybody like him as I do for honestly the conflicts over in the Near East. I could give a fuck about anymore. I'll go back over if I have to make money, but I don't want to go back. I'd rather go somewhere and where it's nice, man, where it's fucking
Yeah.
got rain and green, and I just lived too many years in that. I'm not gonna get into it. I mean, I know there's green in Iraq and green in Afghanistan. I'm not being an idiot. I've seen how lush some of the places are, but I'm just sick of that. I guess I'm sick of the entire. I don't know. I don't even want to go there. It's
It's
a
just
cultural thing.
it's just the region. You could
Yeah.
throw trillions of dollars at it, trillions of man hours worth of aid and help and fucking structuring their entire existence, building up their businesses and infrastructure and industries, and they'd still fuck it up. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's just, and again, I don't want to come across as I'm
You
being
don't have to
racist or
say
anything like
that.
that,
You
but
don't
it's
have
a
to say that.
cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. You know, you look at Afghanistan, it's very tribal. They do not give a fuck what's going on outside their village or even compound.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's why they've been stuck in the Stone Age for thousands of years. There's nothing different now about the average Afghan from there was 1,000, 1,500 years ago. Apart from now, they cut around with a mobile phone or an AK-47. There might be a lucky enough to have a generator that runs 3 hours a day. That's pretty much it. The only time that they see anything from the 20th century is maybe a car or a British or an American soldier or a Dutch soldier, whatever, an aircraft. You know what I mean? They're still living in the mud walls that were built 500 years ago.
Except for the Afghans who are lucky enough to live near military bases where they get to go to the PXs, live the life. I mean, man, here's the whole point. They want you have oases like Saudi Arabia, Dubai, the UAE. You know what I'm talking about. Kuwait, where Bahrain, where you can. It's like Dubai, man, and it's right across the bridge from in Saudi. So the point is, you have little oases like that, where it's the first world, and sometimes it's even more first world than we are in some ways because they've been doing their infrastructure continuously, but for a shorter time. I think during the Gulf War, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was actually 35 years old that they actually established it after the wars that the House of Saud won. But Fahd was the king at that time, King Fahd. But the point is, the rest of it, they have laptops, they have cell phones, they have internet, uh, but like you said, it's spotty at best. Their culture, and you never have to say racism is not. You can say culturism. You're not being a culturist, but who even cares about that? All cultures are not equal. You know, that'd be like saying my culture is better. My American culture is better than yours, Baz's. That's stupid.
Yeah.
It's just different. And if a culture doesn't mix, it doesn't mix. And that's okay. And you don't have to, it's actually this whole bullshit with the culture war, quote unquote. it's being foisted upon everybody to accept shit that's abhorrent. It's very, you know this as well as I do. In Iraq and Afghanistan, it is not uncommon to know that somebody's a kid toucher. In the West, that's so prohibited as it should be because you're taking somebody's innocence. And that's what the whole crime of that is about. You're destroying a human being. And, you know, anyways, I could go on about that. But the point is, all cultures are not equal, and that's okay. But some cultures don't have to blend with others either. And that's not being anything other than a culturalist. And if that makes somebody think that I'm some sort of supremacist, I don't really give a fuck because I'm not a supremacist. I've lived in their culture and I have accepted their bullshit, you know, to a point. But there's some things I didn't accept. And one of them, well, a lot of them were dealt with the way they treated their women and their children. And that's okay that I feel that way. And I'm not going to change.
Yeah, there's another flip side to that. That culture will probably never change. And
I don't
if you
think it
looked
will
at
either.
yeah, if you look like Iran was the exact same culture as the West, and it is a westernized culture. It's not as
Yep.
sort of like secular as even though it's a secular country, as in it's not. It's sort of like a quasi North Korea. You know what I mean? You can go there and things like that, but it's not.
It's a theocracy.
Yeah, yeah. You know where I'm going with that. But I would say if it was a carbon copy of Saudi Arabia, there wouldn't be an issue. You know, it's just that there's two streams in that country. There's the normal political stream, and then there's the religious stream. Again, the same as the Saudis, but the Saudis have got a royal family, and the royal family has got a good grasp of both, where Iran doesn't have that, and it's socially inept. Iran, not as socially retarded as North Korea, but it's quite socially retarded. But if you look at Iran itself, and now you've got to differentiate between the two. Iran is a very different country to Iraq, both culturally and with its infrastructure and the way the country's run, um, because they aren't gassing their own people. You know, it's a very sort of, I would say, a more socialized country
Yeah.
than Iraq was or will probably ever be. But with that, you've got that religious sort of element that is very its political element isn't sort of that hostile. It's a religious element. The sort of like Wahhab, not so much Wahhabism, but that element of Islam that wants rid of the Jew in the Middle East, you know, and the Western. You know what I mean? Everything
Western influence. Right.
yeah, Western influence is poison. It's haram. You know, um, that's what we're dealing with. And I think, like you said, we just need to let them just get the fuck on with their own lives. They aren't going to stay. They aren't going to strike Israel because Israel have got a lot more nuclear weapons than they have, and Israel with the UK and America, it comes as a package. I know dare say to a certain point the Saudis, because the Saudis like that oil money.
The
You know what I
Saudis
mean?
are as in bed with Israel as anybody, man.
Yeah,
And same with Dubai and UAE and it's the same that they have there are Jews in every nation over there that hide out and same with Christians. Some of them have to hide their religious beliefs, whatever. But they're a part of that culture still. I mean, when you look back even to the first Gulf War and then the next one, Tariq Aziz, Al Takriti, Saddam Hussein, Al Takriti. Saddam was a Muslim. Tariq was a Christian. And yet Tariq was the second in line for power after Saddam because he came from the same tribe of Tikrit. So it's all bullshit. And you know, everybody says this, that, and the other. And, you know, I don't want to get into the whole difference between the Sunni Shia thing. It's about power. And I did a show. I can't remember if you were on it with me, but people can go back. And I did a show on what power is power And then there's another school of thought: knowledge is power. Knowledge is power is fine, but the problem with knowledge is, how are you going to turn that into something powerful? Oh, you're going to blackmail somebody. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. Well, that person, if they're in a higher elevation of power than you, or even a lower one, if they're willing to exercise power, i.e., use power against you with meaning force, that is power. And power is power, and it always trumps knowledge is power. Never fails. That is humanity. That is the way life works. And I can't remember if you were on for that show or not, brother.
I can't remember, brother. I can't remember. But you see that influence is used a lot more nowadays. It's because we were living this, like I said, I know we have touched on this before. We're living in a more high tech world. The world's a lot quicker than it used to be, even to the point where you're communicating with somebody. Hence, I mean, look, we're communicating on the opposite side of the pond absolutely instantly because we've got Skype, and it's just warfare's a lot faster nowadays. Um,
Yep.
but it's a lot more difficult to conduct yourself. Um, you think of the Cold War, of the Great Game, the Spy Game, and all that good stuff. It was. I'm not saying it was an easy job because obviously it was far from it, but to be an operative or a spy or to gather intelligence was quite easy, without being discovered if you were good. Nowadays, like you said, there's a camera everywhere. Everybody's got a mobile computer in the hand with a smartphone. You know what I mean? Or most people, you know.
And a
Um,
camera.
yeah, it's a lot harder to conduct yourself these days without being influenced by other people, and that's how proxy wars start now. It's through influence. We influence people by either the promise of wealth, the promise of land, the promise of trade, whatever. You know what I mean?
Women.
Influence. Yeah, yeah. Influence nowadays is probably one of the most powerful weapons, along with knowledge, communication, a question, like I've said before on the last show, a question is very powerful. Um,
Influence is nothing more. I mean, shit. You look at the Arab Spring, the debacle that it was under Clinton. You look what they used. They used Facebook until they shut it down, and then switched over to Twitter because it was a little easier to do stuff. And that was all done with the help of another country willing to exert power. It was not knowledge's power. They were willing to exert it to a point. But when it came to the Iranian Green Revolution, guess what? All those assets that were able to be used to overthrow the Arab Spring were shut down on the Iranians, who legitimately were trying to get away, the younger Iranians who were trying to legitimately get away from the theocracy. They wanted to bring it back to steady. And that was cracked down really quickly. And we've both discussed the three legs of the stool you need, the three M's: money, military, and media. And if you miss any of those three legs, just like the coup in Turkey, that coup falls. It's not going to stand.
yeah, and but it'll be interesting to see where this goes. This Iranian fucking farce. Let us say, let's just hope it's like a dud firework and it just peters out and everybody forgets about it. And we'll be moving on to the next shit show that's happening probably somewhere else in the world, probably Russia.
Let's hope it's at least jungle or woodland, man, so we can actually see some green trees and shit like that, dude. I'm so sick of the Near East.
I've worked in the jungle. It's not much fun.
I
Let's
hated
just
it
go
too in
for.
Indonesia. Hold on. I hated it too in Indonesia, bruh. But I'm telling you, it was so much better seeing that than just, just you know what I'm saying. The common
Yeah,
landscapes,
yeah,
and Indonesia is a heavily Muslim nation. I think it's the most populous in the world. The collection of 100, I think 29 islands. I was on Pulau Padang, Maiden, and Pekanbaru. And those operating areas, I mean, it was weird. You could be in a city that was decent, like Pekanbaru, and you'd see some bum with just like a loincloth on, fucking walking around like crazy man, and the same area where they got nice hotels, or you'd see a dead person just laying in the street. He just died of a heart attack, and everybody just acting like, oh, they don't see him. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a whole different cultural experience. It's the same as the Near East culturally in some ways, but in other ways, I don't know. It's a blend of first, second, and third world like that. It's just super fast.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, you just mentioned that there. I was working in East Africa a few years ago, about 4 years ago, something like that. And again, just seeing a dead body at the side of the road, where in our sort of culture, in our society, it's like people are fucking gathered around, everybody's gasping. Obviously, there's again the obligatory fucking camera phone out, but ambulance, police are called. You know what I mean? People are like going, stand back, stand back. Out in sort of places like that, these are ignored because if you, for example, if there's a dead body in the middle of the road, and I've seen this happen, vehicles will either go around it or run over it.
I've seen that too. Yeah.
If you get out and you drag that body from the road to the sidewalk, the pavement, you are then responsible for that body, and that means you're
Yep.
responsible for, let's say, its disposal, the burial, the funeral. You're also responsible for that because as soon as you touch it, you take ownership of it. So while we were working out there, if there was any ever an accident, it was like you're not allowed to
Render
like
aid.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah you lend your aid. It's just like we're standing back and there's some cunt laid on fucking floor, laid folded up like a pretzel, and there's obviously you can see him expiring. It's like, right, well, we need to do something. And it's like if you touch him, he's gonna die anyway. You've got to get rid of the fucker,
Yep.
So it's like fucking, it's crazy, it's crazy. But
And it's
life is cheap. Life is
yeah.
cheap in places like that. You know what I mean?
Well, in all honesty, life is cheap everywhere. There's just that thin veil of civility that we have in the West, thank God. And but it can be blown away, and they try to do that. Prime example: milkshaking, all this stuff to devalue humans. We're already doing that within our own society, and it's
Yeah,
coming from the left. And when I said the left, I said the neocons and the neo progressives, and I mean exactly what I'm saying. I have no qualms with that. And the same thing in places. You'll see bones on the side of a road where all the skin's gone. There's even been predation on it. You can tell, some critter's been nibbling. And that's not an uncommon sight. But see, it's just a whole different atmosphere in the Near East, in places like, you know, uh, the different places you could be in. I was just talking about Indonesia, or prime example, Indonesia versus Singapore, night and day,
mm,
night and day. Uh, I will say this: Singapore. If you think England is so monitored, I was blown away going to Singapore at how heavily monitored that place is, brother. I mean, there is literally your hotel room maybe isn't monitored. I tend to think it is, but that's the only place where you don't see an actual camera is in your
yeah,
actual room. You step out in your hallway, it's like Vegas. The whole Vegas shooting, that's why I did the show on that with Georgios and a few other shows. The whole Vegas thing was totally screwed because everywhere in Vegas is monitored. It's more like England's monitoring. But yeah, so I don't buy the whole Vegas thing. Anyways, that's my opinion. I'm the foremost expert on it. But we've touched on a lot. I think it's time to close this out so you can go do the thing you have to do today and
yeah.
hopefully stop the bleeding. Uh,
I'm, I'm sat here pinching me fucking
I,
nose.
I know I could tell by your voice, bro. That's why I was like, we better. But we will continue the conversation as we always do. And with that being said, thank you all for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. Baz and I will be in the chat tonight. This should be a good one. I should get it uploaded since we've kept it at a little over an hour. I should be able to get it up within about 4 or 5 hours. We'll see. That should be early enough for you to still be in there and comment on, right there, Baz?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll have two kids with me, but I'm sure I'll sure have the time to do it, brother.
Cool, cool, cool. So, with that being said, Axion Ghost had the first song with, um, you know, the song that I played at the beginning, and link will be in description. And of course, I'll close out with It's Game Time by Axion Ghost. Have a great day. God bless. Be well. And thank you for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. Shuff out.